So in order to create the light mode, dark mode theme, we need a global wrapper on our app. But in our case, what we're going to do instead is just use state and show you how to implement the CSS portion instead of worrying about the global state of how the colors are being loaded. So first of all, we need to have a light theme and a dark theme. So if we go into our code and in our index.css, we need to define some base styles. So let's go ahead and do that. And what I'm going to do is essentially just copy what I have. And this is just normal CSS. So the body is going to transition from a background color and the color in 0.5 seconds, which means when we change from light to dark mode, it's going to have a nice transition on there. We have a light mode, which is the white background color with the text color being a 333, which is like a gray. And then the opposite for the dark mode over here. And then the body is just going to be the variable of the BG color that we pass in from the light mode or the dark mode. And the same for the color here. So that's the base styles set. Now what we need to do is we need to have a piece of state at the top level. And what I'm going to do is in our home page, so we'll apply the light mode, dark mode theme on the home page. We're going to have a piece of state in here. And essentially it's just going to be the const of dark mode and set dark mode. And initially it's going to be false. So let's just import React in here and so on. And then what I want to do is we need to pass it into the page layout, because the page layout is what gets rendered for the HTML and the body tags. So let's go ahead and pass in the dark mode in here. So dark mode is equal to dark mode. And again, this is going to be a Boolean prop. So if I go into page layout, what I'm going to do is add dark mode in here. And this is optional because we only implement in the home page because we don't have global state. So there's no point implementing it on the login page or the register page. And now all we need to do is add dark mode in our destructured props. And then where we have the height of full in here, what I'm going to do is use template literals like so, because dark mode will either render something or it'll render something else. So height of full and then selector. If dark mode is true, we want to show something, otherwise we want to show something else. So going back into our index.css over here, we have the variables declared. So as you can see here, this class is light mode and also dark mode. So what we want to do is when it is dark mode is true, we want to give the class of dark mode like so, and then we put this in strings. Otherwise, we just want to do light mode, which is coming from the index.css. So now save that. And if I save the props being passed in as well. So that's the page layout set. So what I want to do is dark mode is now false. So let's test that out, the theory. So in our code, at the minute, dark mode is false, which is correct. But if I was to change that, so let me close this down, and we can also close the individual products down and so on. And if I set this to true now and save, what will happen is it will change our app from light mode now to dark mode. So now you can see here, everything is in dark mode and it's also responsive. So that is working correctly. So now what we need to do is be able to toggle between light and dark mode. And the way to do that is to create a toggle component that changes the state in between light and dark. So let's go ahead and create that. So in our header, what I want to do is pass in both props. So dark mode equal to dark mode and set dark mode equal to set dark mode. So let's go into our header. In here, we want to receive props. So these are the dark mode and set dark mode, like so. And then I also need to set the header props. So let's go ahead and set the header props, which is going to be in our types file over here. So let me go ahead and implement the header props, which is essentially export type header props is equal to dark mode and set dark mode, like so. And then all we need to do is implement this in here. And now what we need to do is use dark mode and set dark mode. So essentially we need to pass them into both the desktop header and the mobile header. So let's go ahead and do that, which is quite simple. So let's go back into the home component. We just need to copy this and pass them into the desktop header and the mobile header. And then we also need to update the TypeScript types. And it's quite handy because we have the types.ts already created. So now basically copy this and in the desktop header props, add them in there, and also in the mobile header props, it will already add it because we're extending from the desktop header props. So let's save that. So now we can close that off and all the types are being passed in correctly. We now need to get the desktop header and render the toggle component inside. But first of all, we need to create the toggle component. So let's go into components and create a new folder and call it toggle. So this is the light and dark mode toggle, index.tsx, and this is going to be RAFCE, and we're going to call it toggle like so. And now what we're going to do with the toggle component is we're going to receive some props. So I'm just going to paste them in here, which is the dark mode and set dark mode. So essentially we get in the dark mode and set dark mode, and instead of a div, what I'm going to use is switch from headless UI React, which is essentially a switch component. So now we can have props on there. So we have the checked value and also the unchanged value, which is checked is dark mode. So if that's true or false, then it will show the relevant one, and then the unchanged as well in here. And then inside the switch, we need a couple of items. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, do a screen reader span element. So span, and this span is going to be the theme toggle. So let's call it theme toggle. And then the class name for this is going to be SR only. So screen reader only. So now if I save, that is fine. And what I want to do is render this toggle now into the desktop header. So if we scroll down, I mentioned here and I put a note in here saying the toggle. So let's go ahead and implement the toggle. And then we want to also add in the dark mode and set dark mode as well. And now that is being received in our desktop header props over here, as you can see. So all I want to do is get access to it. So dark mode and also the set dark mode. And now all we can do is, instead of the true value here, we can do that. And then also copy the set dark mode over here and paste that in as props over here. So that is the desktop header showing the toggle. And then we also need to do it for the mobile header. So again, we can just uncomment this one out here. And then we just need to, again, receive the props from dark mode and set dark mode. So let's go ahead and receive the props like so. So now if I save, we should have some sort of toggle showing in the headers. At the minute, nothing is showing because we've only just put in a switch. We now need to add in the relevant styling for the switch. So let's go ahead into our toggle component. In here, we already have the span class for the screen reader. We now need to add class names dependent on whether it's dark mode, it should show a moon icon. Otherwise, it should show the sun icon. And we want to also render that on the headers. So now on the switch, I'm going to add a class name. And this class name is going to have the base styled in, which is fine. But what I also want to do is render different colors for different backgrounds based on whether it's light or dark mode. Now, the way you would do that, there's a function I'll create in a moment, which is called class names, which is what you can do in Tailwind. And this is wrapping everything. So essentially, if it is dark mode, so if dark mode is true, then we want a background of red. Otherwise, we want a background of gray for the switch itself, like so. And then we can add these styles on after the comma, like this. So if I save that, what I now need to do is create this class names function, which is quite easy to implement, and I'll do it here now. So it will be const class names. So essentially what will happen is you spread in the classes. So there's 1, 2, 3 classes in here. We have this as the base style, and then depending on whether it's dark mode or light mode, it will spread this class name in here. And then that is a string, an array of strings. Then it returns classes, dot filter, and then join. So basically it filters all of the classes in this array, and then it joins them together into one. So that is the class names function. So now we have created the switch style. So in the switch style, what we now need to do is create a couple of spans. So this is going to be a span for light mode and a span for dark mode. So the circles on either side. So let me just paste in the code. Again, this is utilizing class names. dependent on whether it's a dark mode or light mode. And then all we need to do is import the relevant icons in here. So now that is the toggle complete. If I save this, so the toggle receives the dark mode and the set dark mode. And if we click on it, it should toggle. So as you can see here now, the moon is showing. If we click, it toggles from light mode to dark mode in here. So that's how you would implement light mode and dark mode with Tailwind. Of course, there's better options and better ways to do this with global state management, such as Redux or Recoil or whatever the global state manager is that you're using. But in our case, we're purely focusing on Tailwind CSS, and this is how you would implement it, just using React State and passing down the props. So the only thing left to do now is just add some space here. So let's go ahead and do that. So going in our desktop header, we have this here. We just need to give, on the large screen, we just need to have a gap. So on large screens, we want a gap of 4. So now if I save, you can see now we have a gap in here.